Good evening, everyone. Here am I, Marina Kazakova, and Poetry Before Bed. Today we are running a special show. We've got a special guest, a Belgium-based poet, Inke Gieghase. In September 2018, she was a finalist of the Belgian Poetry Slam Championship. Inke is a freelance writer, journalist, poetry slam artist, and a public speaker. Today we are going to speak about her spoken word art, and we will listen to her beautiful poems. So, Inke, hello.
Hi.
Would you say a few words about yourself, introduce yourself?
Okay, well, you did a pretty good introduction, but well, I'm really excited to be here, and I've never done spoken word or poetry on radio, so I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, I have got a few texts ready for you, and I'm just ready to dive right in.
That's good. A few words on how we got acquainted. I know Inke for already more than a year. She was a part of an ongoing project during the year 2019 called No Hate, a series of events that we organized in Belgium and around Europe, in Italy and other countries, Germany, where we presented our poems dedicated to the issues of discrimination and fighting violence and hate issues. Therefore, I know Inke as an activist representing queer community in Belgium, and therefore, for me personally, it would be interesting today to hear the mystical part of Inke's poetry, and therefore I would start with the first question: what's poetry for you? How do you define it? Or maybe you can come up with one of your favorite definitions of someone else.
Mm-hmm. Well, I actually thought of my favorite definition, and it's one by Audre Lorde. So I just want to read it for everyone to make it clear what she said. And she said that poetry is not a luxury. It is a vital necessity of our existence. It forms the quality of the light within which we predicate our hopes and dreams towards survival and change. First made into language, then into idea, then into more tangible action. Poetry is the way we help give name to the nameless so it can be thought. And I'm especially fond of this last part, that we give name to the nameless so it can be thought, because sometimes there are these parts of life when you're not sure what something is, or it's too mystical, or you just can't grasp it. And then through poetry, you can kind of give shape to its meaning. And I think also poetry is it's part of the essence of who I am as a person, as a human being. And there's a lot of chaos going on in my head, and I think it kind of slows my thoughts down, and so that I can reflect on it once I wrote them down. And I think it also has the power to connect people and to raise awareness and just to start a conversation about something.
So that's what my second question is about. I've met a lot of spoken word artists over here in the Belgian context, mostly in Flemish context, and a lot of young spoken word artists, poets, use poetry as a door for their activism. Some of them even come to the field just because it gives them, it's a highway actually to express their political ideas or any kind of ideas. To me, as a sentimental Russian, poetry is first magic. And therefore, my question to you, are you dealing with the magic aspects of poetry in your texts? And if yes, could you please demonstrate to us two contrasting examples? One, a poem, a text that deals with social issues, let's say, that I was witnessing when you were presenting your poetry in different venues. And another one is a more sentimental piece, please.
Okay. So I think in most of my texts, it seems like activism is the core of my poetry. But I think it seems like that because right now my being an activist is one of the key aspects of my life. But actually my love for words has been always the true core of my poetry, I've been wanting to become a writer or a poet since I was 6 years old. And it was out of just a passion and a love for creating something, for using words to make something that is bigger than some people, that all of us can understand. And I think this love for words, which eventually creates magic, is the core. But activism right now is just very important in my life. And that's why it's such a big part of my poetry as well. But for example, when like I have this amazing person in my life, my girlfriend, and she makes me want to write like sappy love poems, you know, and so it depends on which events are happening in my life, which stories I come across, which people I meet, and it also decides what I'm writing about. But like this kind of just this magic of creating something with words stays at the core of what I do as a poet, I think. And I actually brought like one poem with me. It's the first poem I ever published, I ever shared with the world. And I was 16 when I wrote this. And it's a poem about making love to a woman, while I never did that when I was 16. So it was my pure imagination. But yeah, this is the more, the sappy side of me, the more love side of me, I guess. So it's in Dutch, and it's called Frambozen. Streling aan je voeten, omhoog klimmend over je benen, lichtjes gespreid, springend van de ene naar de andere kant. Ik kom aan op de heuvel. Venus fluistert dat ik verder moet. Het warme pad over je buik volgend. Nu hoger, wandelend tussen twee pretpakketjes. Je hartslag in je hals verraadt je plezier. Je ademhaling steeds dichter. Lippen als frambozen. So that's the first poem I shared with the world.
So lips as raspberries.
Yes, basically, yes. And I was very nervous, especially because my parents and my family would read this. And it's very queer and very, not something I usually share with them. So, but it was an amazing experience to share this with the world.
And where was it published?
It was like, I competed in, it's called Wondere Woorden. It was a competition, and they had this little poetry book with all the winning poems in them. I forgot the name, if the book had a name, but anyways, it wasn't there.
So it was the first big achievement, actually.
Yeah, I guess it's what kind of motivated me to keep sharing, because it was a very big step for me to share because it's kind of a part of you, it's a part of your soul that you're putting out there, and it was a scary moment, but I'm very happy I did it.
I don't know if I missed, was there a real object of the poem, or it's just a muse?
It's about making love to someone and there is a lot of passion, but like I said, it was just my fantasy, because but yeah, it's about making love to a person that you feel really passionate towards. Mm-hmm. And like I kind of recently, I was sitting at the book bar and I was too early for a performance, and all of a sudden this inspiration came to me. And I just started writing, and it was kind of this magical moment because it came out of nowhere. And I would also like to read this poem, because a few months ago I saw someone performing a poem about a twin that they never had, but they were going to have, and I experienced the same thing. And then all of a sudden I thought of this, and this poem flew out of me, basically, and I want to share it with you. It's also one of my non-activistic poems. And it was like when my mom was pregnant for 3 months, they shared with the world, we're going to have twins, and everyone knew. And then right after the part died and there was only me. And sometimes I feel like I missed something in my life, and I've been wondering if it was that or something else. Then I try to put these feelings into a poem. The title is Wat als? Wat als? Een vraag die in mijn mond de wanden opzoekt. De tocht volgend richting uitgang. Meestal schuif ik er een stopbord voor. Wat als is voor mensen die niet hebben gedurfd, dacht ik altijd. Voor mensen die net iets minder hebben geleefd. Maar deze wat als verandert het stopbord in eenrichtingsverkeer. Een achtbaan die te lang in het donker heeft gehangen, plots in beweging richting onbestaande antwoorden. Wat als ik een tweeling was? Had je mij het gewicht van de wereld helpen dragen, of zouden we ons samen in onze tienerjaren verstoppen op vergeelde schooltoiletten, vastklampend aan een boek waar het leven net iets lichter was? Had ik op mijn 10e wel aan iemand kunnen zeggen dat ik wiskundig was aan het uitrekenen of het doorspoeltouw van die toiletten zou breken als ik mijn nek erdoor zou steken? Hoe ik op mijn 14e geen nee durfde zeggen. Hoe ik op mijn 18e mijn borsten er wou afvegen. Zou jij, net niet als ik, wel perfect in een hokje passen? Zouden we elkaars ogen hebben? Dezelfde diepte van kuiltjes als we lachen? Beide wenen bij elke Harry Potter film? Zouden we beide altijd te veel ja zeggen? Weigeren een strijkijzer vastnemen, want de kreuken in ons leven is wat het net zo spannend maakt. Zouden het dan 2 lichamen zijn die schaamteloos tussen bevroren pizza's en wc-papier dansen als Marvin Gaye's stem door de speakers van de supermarkt heen krakkelt? Wat als ik een tweeling was? Had je dan vanavond in het publiek gezeten? Hadden mijn vrolijke teksten dan minder onbestaand geweest? Wat als? Zou ik dan nu iemand anders missen? So yeah, that just kind of came to me in this moment, and I performed it right after, and I was really nervous because it's very personal, but it feels good to think about it and to talk about it. So yeah. And then I looked for my most activistic text I have, and it's a queer poem. It's about the queer community, and I think I wrote it about 3 months ago. No, I wrote it when it was Pride season, so when all the Prides were happening in Belgium, and I was sometimes a bit frustrated about the way people dealt with things. And that's when I wrote this. It doesn't have a title, so I'm just going to start. Je geschiedenis kennen is soms bekennen dat je er geen deel van was. Is weten dat namen zoals Marsha of Sylvia meer hebben betekend voor regenboogvlaggen dan bedrijven die een koopwaar verstikken met rood tot paars gekleurde stickers. Roos wordt nogal eens vermeden, zodat er niet te snel met pinkwashing wordt gesmeten. Mijn hart bloedt sneller dan het wegebben van ijskappen. Ik moet naar lucht happen als ik zie hoe onder die regenboog wit nog steeds naar voren wordt geschoven. Enkel wat kleur op het affiche om de gemoederen te bekoren. Als ik zie dat L en G en B nog altijd niet met T zijn verwoven. En over mensen die anderen met hun lichaam bekoren wordt, gewoon gezworen. Ik kan het niet helpen om dan toch even te vermelden dat die eerder vernoemde helden ons nog allemaal blijven verder helpen. Ook al zijn ze al meer dan een decennia geleden van deze wereld weggegleden. De klokken op onze bureaus blijven maar doortikken. Maar wordt het niet weer tijd dat er een zwarte transvrouw aan het roer gaat zitten? Zodat wijzers worden vastgegrepen en we teruggaan naar een verleden waar Pride een riot was. in plaats van het kapitalisme dat onze identiteit blijft ontlenen. So yeah, I think that was the most activistic poem I have. And lately it has been a lot regarding this theme.
We will proceed, thank you very much. We will proceed to the next question, and then we'll have a short music pause, and we will listen to our favorite singer.
Yes.
The next question is the following. Any creativity implies irrationality. And my question is, when it comes to composing a poem, how irrational is your process? Because I know the reality of submitting poetry pieces, for example, to different kinds of literary magazines or festivals. You have to stick to a certain theme, let's say, and it's kind of an ordered task. And therefore, when I'm composing this kind of pieces, they're not my favorite at last, because I don't feel them. They are quite rational.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like when you have this ordered text, when you have to stick to certain guidelines, I kind of hate it almost because it kind of blocks your creative process. You can't write to your full potential because you have these kind of rules in your head that limit your thinking process. I think that usually when I write, when I don't have to stick to any rules, I get quite irrational and I just let my feelings flow, and it can be anger, it can be happiness, it can be being scared, it can be anything, but those feelings kind of dictate what I'm writing at the time, and I'm not really thinking in a rational way. I'm just letting everything out, and it can have to do with any situation, but it's always so connected to how I truly feel inside, and it's not rational at all. Sometimes when I'm going to perform it at stage afterwards, I reflect on it and I see, will people actually understand what I'm saying? Because if no one will understand, it's still in some way okay. But if you really want to get some message, to get it across, it's also important that people on some level understand what you're saying or what you're trying to say. So this rational part only comes in afterwards, like after I finish the text, when I finish my first draft, that's when the rational part comes in.
And when it comes to drafts, I also suddenly realized a few days ago when talking to my artistic collaborator from Italy, she's using still a typewriter machine, and I realized that I have never ever typed on a typewriting machine in my life, and I don't know how to use it. All those sounds are quite unfamiliar to me. Yes, I know them from the movies, let's say, yes, but I never type wrote on a machine. And when it comes to writing a poem, the first draft, I'm always doing it on the computer nowadays, not even in a notebook. What's your process?
I always write it down on paper, because wherever I go, I have a notebook with me. Like, I need a notebook in 2 seconds if I get inspired. So I'm taking it literally everywhere. And so I rarely sit down at a table and think, okay, I'm going to write now. I have to write something now. It's always like when I see something, when I hear a story, when something happens, or it can even just be a sunset or something. But when there's something that triggers something in me, something creative, I just write it down and it flows out of me. So it's never forced. It always just, the creativity jumps on me or something. So yeah, and then I just write it down, and it's just, in 5 minutes, it's there. It's just, yeah, that's how it.
Buonasera, sono Marina. I'm here again with you, Poetry Before Bed. And our special guest is Inke Gieghase, a Belgium-based poet born in Leopoldsburg, a wonderful military town in Limburg. We are continuing our conversation, and I will proceed with my next question about the issue of loneliness, being alone, being sentimental, being in a mood to write poetry, and at the same time being an activist and belonging to a particular group, community of people. Do you feel that you belong to, for example, a queer community in Belgium or LGBTI plus community? Inke? Mm-hmm. What's your opinion on that?
No, first I want to say I'm very proud that I'm part of this rainbow family, that I am like non-binary, that I just fall in love with people, not with gender. I'm not very into labels in general. I'm just always saying I'm a person who falls in love with people, and that's just my essence, kind of. But on the other hand, I think unity and connecting with one another is very important. But like in basically all other communities, in the LGBTQIA plus community, there is also forms of discrimination that when I was 16, I was very naive because I thought we as a community are oppressed, so why would we still oppress other people? That's what I thought when I was 16. Right now, I'm like, I was so naive to think that. And, you know, when I started to realize, okay, in this community, there is the same kinds of discrimination. There's also outside of the community, there is also racism, there is ableism, there is sexism, there is all these kinds of discrimination. And, you know, I can only say I'm truly proud when I'm part of a community that actively bans discrimination. And this is not always the case. So I am proud to be who I am. I just wish that our community would be more connected and would work actively against forms of discrimination. And I know this is done by a lot of people, so I'm very proud of that. But there's also still work that has to be done. But yeah, so this kind of belonging to a group, it's nice when you're with people who you know of that you can be your true selves with them. But I think there still should be more unity in our community. Wow, that sounded
You're writing poems.
Yeah, exactly.
Instant poetry.
Yeah.
And in regards to your self-identification, how would you identify yourself, like first 3-5 words?
So if I would introduce myself in 3 words,
yes.
kind of. Wow, that's a hard question. I would say I'm queer. I am an extroverted introvert, if that's even a thing. And I'm also I always want to keep discovering. I don't know how to say that in one word.
Explorer.
A curious explorer.
Yes.
I am an explorer.
Oh,
it's official now.
So
yeah.
The third one I would put on the first place, but it's just my, I think, Russian background interrupts and that is not agreeing with you now, because my question is always, why do people like you who identify themselves and put their sexual orientation, let's say, or whatever it is, up front, if, according to me, it's quite an internal a private issue? Why should it be put forward when it comes to introducing yourself to people you don't know?
Mm-hmm. To be honest, like, queer was the first word that jumps to my mind. So it's not always the first thing I say about myself. But something that I do often say at the beginning when I meet a person that doesn't know me yet is the fact that I am non-binary and my pronouns are they, them. Sometimes I'm okay with she, her, but not always. And I just make clear that I don't like to be addressed as a woman or as a girl, as anything that has a feminine connotation to it, because that's just not who I am. So that's what I say at the beginning, because it makes me feel anxious or uncomfortable when people speak to me this way. So but I'm not gonna say like, hey, I'm Inke and I'm pansexual or something. Yes. When the first time when I meet someone, that just comes up when it comes up in a conversation. Like, I don't do out of the closets anymore. You know, it just happens when it happens. It's not necessary for me to tell everyone. I'm very open about it, but it's not something I always say if it doesn't matter at that point. But actually, I would say that I would put explorer first, because that's so me, jumping from place to place all the time and always trying to learn things and trying to discover things. So I think that's my number one now.
You were actually one of them, and I'm still very grateful to you, because you were one of the first poets in Belgium who replied to my proposal to participate in our No Hate campaign and traveled with us through mostly all the venues and traveled to Italy. Really, you are an altruist and an explorer. Thank you very much for supporting all of our initiatives.
Well, you're welcome. I mean, it was an amazing opportunity. I enjoyed it so much. I performed abroad. I performed in Italy, and for me, it was like such a big step as a person, as an artist. And, I think you noticed it as well. I really blossomed in the group. Like at the beginning, I was this quiet, shy person. And then at the end, I was drinking cocktails in Budapest with all of you and having so much fun. So that's always my growth I experience when I get to know people. At the beginning, I am this shy, like, hi, my name is Inke, nice to meet you. And then at the end, I'm like, hey, party, So this is always a process I go through when I meet new people. I'm always very cautious at the beginning.
So yes, for me, as an organizer, it was quite a curious experience to observe you evolving from the really absolute introvert to an open person. Let's proceed to another question, and it's a serious one. The price of our life. What is more important, in your opinion, to save a person or to save the earth?
I think, I thought about this for a few minutes, but I came up with a response quite quickly because without an earth, without a planet, there is nothing else. And I think this is often forgotten in all kinds of activism, in queer activism, in all kinds of activism, that without a planet, there's nothing left fighting for. And just in general, the society as a whole is kind of, maybe some people are denying it, but in general, people are just, it's something for the future, it will be okay, and we are basically intoxicating ourselves. We are intoxicating nature, ourselves, our lungs, or our nature. And we have to do more. We have to start doing more. So I would definitely give my life if that means I could save this planet. I would save so many beautiful things. So I wouldn't even think of it, I think. When that moment is there and they ask me, okay, if you give your life now, the planet will blossom and will become wholesome again forever, I would do it right there.
Thanks for a beautiful thought. Another question is about the modern progress. Do you feel that we are moving forward as civilization or backward?
I'm quite pessimistic when it comes to these questions. I think if you look at what we would call modern progress, I immediately think of the capitalist system we live in and how both people and nature are dying because of some people believe in this eternal economic growth, which is utter crap, if I can phrase it like that. We can't keep pushing the earth to its limits. We already pushed it past its limit. We can't keep pushing people to and past their limits. People are dying because of people who want to be wealthy and don't care about anything else than money. And I don't see, me as a person, I can't grasp this idea that you can put paper notes before people's lives. So I think this modern progress is not progress, it's dehumanization and seeing people as money and not as human beings.
And here we come to another important question of deculturalization, dehumanization. Now what we are struggling right at the moment in Belgium is the fact that government announced a huge cut in subsidizing culture, the sector of culture, by 60%. Most of the people, my friends, artists, poets, musicians, changed their profile pictures, covering 60% of their face with yellow color. And at first I didn't know what was happening, but then, yes, I realized that here we are trying to optimize our budgets on reducing the subsidies on culture for the upcoming years. What do you think of this? And another second question is, how did Flemish culture form you as an artist?
Okay. Well, when I first heard about the budget cost, let's call it like that, on culture, I was very disappointed but not surprised, because since this government has been at power, this Flemish government, I could already predict that things, well, in general, I could predict things that would happen that would not benefit our society, that would create kind of this feeling of us and them. And culture is such an essential part of creating a community, a society where people accept each other, or at least can live together with mutual respect. And people don't realize, especially the people who have put this 60% cut out there, they don't realize how much impact it will have on these smaller organizations who depend on these subsidies, who can't exist without them. And it is such a vital part. And I'm getting angry because we need to keep fighting, and we will. Like, this doesn't mean we're gonna give up. We're gonna keep pushing culture to the front stage. And it is a setback, but we won't stop. And I've seen so many protests already, like, for example, online, but also offline, people singing protest songs, people having protests and, spreading their message of hope and of anger at the same time. And I just think it's crap. But I think there can be made costs in other parts that are being set, like getting money now, but shouldn't. But
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Mm-hmm.
You sounded quite pessimistic in regards to modern progress, but at the same time you are so active and you believe in actions, in counter actions, either online or offline. You are always there, to protest and to fight for, I don't know, whatever it is, yes, your values. Now, how does this coexist, those two things coexist in you? Kind of pessimism about our future and at the same time your proactiveness?
I think the best way to describe myself is a hopeful pessimist. And I know that's a huge contradiction, but I was talking about this actually, 2 days ago with someone, about this, like, kind of hopeful comparing to this pessimist view. And this person was saying, what do we have left if there's no more hope? And I started thinking about that. And, I've never given up hope. It's just a realistic fact that right-wing groups, politicians, people are growing, are getting louder, are getting funded a lot more than other groups who need this more. And this is a fact. But I don't want to say that this is the end of the world and that there's nothing going to change or something like that. I always keep this hopeful message, and I keep hoping for improvement. And I see so many beautiful people around me who are also not willing to give up, who want to keep fighting. And that keeps me hopeful. But on the other side, we also just have to look at the reality and see that a lot of dehumanizing things are happening, and that people are kind of not being seen as people anymore, and just as a product or as one part of their identity. And we need to broaden our perspective and see people as human beings again. That's one step forward already. I know, for example, India Moore. They act on a TV series that's called Pose, and it's about the ballroom culture in the late 80s and 90s. And they said something about, I think it was on their Twitter, that they said something that really stuck with me, and I just want to read out their quote. They said, "It's important to include people or women or men after referring to transgender people. Referring trans people as transgenders or a transgender is dehumanizing and separatistic. Transgender people aren't transgenders. We are men, women, and people of trans experience. And this stuck with me because I think we can apply this to everything. Often people are seen as one part of their identity and they are hated because of that. But people don't look beyond that. If people, these groups, these hateful groups, see a person on the street wearing a hijab, for example, they think that's the only thing this person is, and they don't look beyond this piece of clothing. They don't look to them as a person. They just look to them as something they don't know, and if they don't know something, they get scared of it, and that's when they become hateful. Because a lot of people now, also when you look at the elections, people acted out of fear and not out of hope or not out of empathy. People wanted some change, but they're steering towards the wrong direction. And I really hope that people realize that change is necessary, but towards the other direction, not the one we're heading towards now.
Thank you. We still didn't answer the question about the influence of Flemish culture onto your art and personality. Belgium, as we all know, is historically divided between three cultures, German, Flemish, and French. And somehow you manage to live together at the same time to, box each other. What makes you a Flemish person?
When I got this question before, I texted my girlfriend and I asked, what even is Flemish culture? Like, how should I answer this question? Because at first I couldn't even think of, what is our culture? I've never even identified as a Flemish person. Okay, I live in Flanders, and I guess by definition that makes me a Flemish person, but I never identified as such. I never even fully identified as a Belgian person. It's just my mom was born in Canada, my dad was born in Belgium, my mom has Belgian nationality, so by definition that makes me a Belgian person. But I never had this kind of national pride in me, or yeah, I'm Belgian, and when I'm going abroad, I'm like, hey, I'm Belgian, yo, who are you? I never had this kind of necessity to express this, where I was from, or how I would describe myself in that way. But I think if you look at it, in Flanders, people tend to be a lot more, but I don't want to generalize, so I'm saying this, not everyone is like this. People tend to be more reserved, more individualistic, and it would be nice if people would just start talking to each other, start listening to each other. Like when you get on the train, a person sits there and you're scared of sitting next to them, or you don't want to talk to them, and you move somewhere else as far as you can, or in the bus you go as far as you can, instead of just starting a conversation and listening to people's stories. And it can start at this basic point. Just listen to others and stop being so scared of something you don't know. Just get to know it. Get over that anger or that fear, and just start listening. But how Flemish culture, to come back to your question, for me as an artist, is maybe it happened subconsciously, but I don't think it had that much of an influence when I started. It was mostly my parents who taught me to be a decent human being, let's say, who taught me to be empathetic, to show empathy towards people, to just be a decent person. But in the way that it did shape me is that I think, I don't think, it is just a fact. I live in an environment where I am safe as a person. When I go out in the street and hold my girlfriend's hand, I don't get killed for that reason. I don't get attacked. Or the chances are really low, at least here. I can speak out without fearing for my life. And in this way, I guess the culture here, or the situation here, because I'm not sure if safety is a part of culture, really. But the situation here has enabled me to be able to speak out. And I wasn't aware of these privileges, when I was 16 years old. I was just living my life, not aware of the situation around me. And then I became aware of these privileges and how I should not use them. So I think this kind of aspect of safety, of being able, who I am as a person, has provided me with the tools to become an artist, an activist, because they are really connected, that is more open and has more chances to share stories. And that way it has helped me. Yeah.
And do you agree with me that Flemish culture is quite a visual culture? And if I would be asked, what artists do I know from your context? Yes, I would come immediately up with the great Flemish painters. I would come up with a lot of names in fashion industry, architects, so also comic strip artists. So mostly it's people that represent visual arts. And then you are a spoken word artist. And as I have heard a lot from my friends from the Flemish community, they were not taught at school a lot in regards to poetry, and they, of course, never were asked to learn poems by heart. I mean, our generation, those maybe who are over 50, they were still following another approach, but those who are younger than, let's say, 45 and then younger and younger, most of the people from Flemish community, they never did it. So how did you come up to poetry, yes, if you were not raised close to poetry?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, like, both of my parents are not artistic, like, they don't perform any kind of art. And in school, it was indeed, like, very... The stuff we learned was very dry, and they didn't make us like love literature or love poetry, and like there was no passion. And you know, I need to see passion in someone to be attracted to the art they're doing. And it was only when I've always loved writing, but it was when I read Harry Potter that I really got into reading, and I was really, I know, Harry Potter is what got me there. I'm not so proud of what J.K. Rowling is sometimes saying lately, but it is a fact that when I was 6 years old, I read the first Harry Potter book, and I said, I'm going to be like her. I'm going to write books, I'm going to create art, and that's when I became this huge book nerd, you know, who never looked back. But it was when I was only about 21, and I saw a performance video of Andrea Gibson. There is an artist who lives in America, in the United States of America, and they were doing a performance together with Mary Lambert, and it was about the shooting that happened at a gay club in Orlando. And it was like 7 to 8 minutes long, and all this time I was, you know, my face stuck, like was glued to the screen because I was so into it. Like they were carrying me there and I was envisioning it, and it was so sad, but at the same time also so beautiful, let's say, the way they put it into words, not the situation, but the way they put it into words. And I was so moved, and I thought, I want to be on that stage too. I want to create something that moves people, that makes people aware of things, that starts a conversation. And right after I saw the video, I started writing, and I wrote my first poem. And if you want, I can also read it to you now. So the first time I actually wrote it in English, because, you know, I was hearing this English spoken word performance, and that's why I decided to do it in English. And the title is Toxic, and it's about my non-binary gender identity. My own shape, skin, body, belonging there, bottled up desire, but cracks in the glass, ready to blow into pieces of misunderstanding, misplacement, misjudgment, miss. Maybe I'm not a miss. Labels are sometimes just for products, not for humans. Labels are for supermarket shelves, medicines, and toxic liquids. Toxic. Toxic. That is what the air feels like. The air of the box society puts me in. Hard to grow, hard to breathe, hard to be. My heart is yet to be understood. My heart doesn't feel blue or pink. My mind doesn't see boy or girl. My body is a naked canvas. I color it red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Black and white is for old pictures, chessboards, and zebras. Not for our thoughts. So why not bend these hard, straight lines so that those boxes no longer dictate? So we were also talking about deculturalization before. And, I was thinking, and often, especially now in Flanders, also with this government, we are trying to put this white Western culture on people who, we are trying to push it on everyone, basically, regarding of who you are, this white Western culture. And we are completely neglecting the needs of other people and their culture. And I think we should provide a space where those cultures can live together with mutual respect. And I think, Flanders trying to push their culture on other people is having this kind of, you only can have the audacity when you realize that there are still statues of Leopold II standing in Flanders, when there are still streets named after him. And it's just, the audacity you need to have to then push our Flemish culture on other people while we not even decolonize our minds and decolonize our spaces. And this is such an important thing that we need to work on, also from the government, also in the society as a whole.
May I not oppose, but add a diametrically opposite opinion. Since I'm an outsider and I live here in Flanders for already 9 years, I appreciate a lot the community that I am in for 9 years. And you are actually, as a nation, much more ahead than other nations. I'm saying that as an outsider. Yes, there are people, and it's, thanks God, not the majority, who think right-wing, yes, or who are promoting this anti-migrant rhetoric. But we are sitting now in Genk, in a city that welcomed so many Italians, Greeks, Turks. Yes, they came to work on mines over here, but they perfectly integrated, and Michele he is with us. He would also, I think, agree with me that you are one people, you are one nation, and you don't feel, you feel that you belong to here. Yes, Michele? Yes, you miss Italian sun, I guess, but yes, at the same time you are as Flemish as Inke. And yes, I really appreciate this multicultural context that we are living over here, and I hope that we will continue the right direction, the left direction. Yeah,
really, I think it's a good thing, supporting this multicultural space that we are living in. I don't think you should push something on someone completely and delete the rest of their identity, saying that's no more a part of them. I think you can mix things and you can make them coexist. But yeah, like you said, there are a lot of people with a lot of different backgrounds, and this diversity only makes us stronger. And that's something we have to realize. It makes us stronger, it makes us better people, it makes us more open-minded. And that's something we should keep in the back of our heads, I think.
Thanks a lot to Radio Internazionale Italia. Here we are, an Italian, a Flemish, and a Russian. And there are a lot more nations here conducting programs and shows from Armenia, from Ukraine, from wherever in the world it is. We continue with poetry, yes?
So I'd like to finish with a poem of mine, and I recently wrote it, and it's not even finished yet. But I just feel like sharing it with all of you. It doesn't have a title yet, but it is based on my baptizing. I was baptized as a Christian when I was only a baby, and I've been thinking a lot about it lately because I'm not religious. I don't identify as a Christian, but as a baby, I became a Christian without even knowing what was happening, and that's why I wrote this poem. Water bond mijn haren aan mijn lichaam. De kerk werd aan mij vastgelijmd. Ik geloofde nu. Ik was een baby, maar ik geloofde nu. Nog geen letter gelezen, maar een boek bepaald met wie ik zou trouwen, hoe ik mijn handen moet vouwen, hoe ik moet rouwen om een man die nooit was. Ik geloof in veel dingen, ik geloof ook in veel dingen niet. Ik geloof in meer. Maar niet dat wat bepaald wordt door een bloedgekroonde heer of zijn witte vader. Als ik mij een meer inbeeld, zie ik warme ogen. Exact het dubbel van het aantal mensen die nu op deze wereld vastplakken. Ik zie de tweeling die ik verloor. Ik zie de zwarte transvrouw met het mes tegen de keel. Ik zie de bedelaar waar het kind om huilt. Ik zie de sekswerker die werd beroofd. Het Roma-kind dat werd verjaagd. De vrouw die werd belaagd. Ik geloof in hen. Ik geloof in de vrouw, het Roma-kind, de sekswerker, de bedelaar, mijn verloren helft. Ik geloof in de nacht die ritmisch de ochtend aankondigt. Een ochtend waar meer warmer is. Waar meer geloof is in hen. Waar meer nu is. So that's just a message that I wanted to finish with. Let there be more warmth. Let there be more, inclusion of everyone, thinking of everyone.
Thank you very much, dear, for coming. I hope that you'll come and visit us more in 2020.
For sure. Thank you for having me.
It was Poetry Before Bed.